Well, fuck. After 100+ hours of gameplay and over a month in real time, I finally beat this fucker. And after all that, I have just one thing to say. No Hulk Hogan. No fucking Hulk Hogan. Look, Atlas, I buy these games for one reason and one fucking reason only. To beat up demonic Hulk Hogans. Persona 3 had Hulk Hogans. Persona 4 had Hulk Hogans. So why the fuck wouldn't there be Hulk Hogans in this one? I suppose it's not all bad news. Now, instead of fighting shadows, which are weird black slimy things, you're fighting personas themselves, which are all characters from mythology, and the enemy design is way better and way more varied in previous games as a result. Unfortunately, I can't show that off too much as there was a recording ban on mid and late game, and then just as I beat the mid game, the ban got lifted, so we've only got early game footage. I couldn't do any more with the information I had at the time. So you're just going to have to trust me. The characters are way more varied in this one than previous ones. But anyway, the game looks and sounds really nice. It has an awesome art style where everything kind of looks like a cartoon, but it all looks 3D at the same time. Lots of games have tried to do this sort of thing in the past, but this is the first one that's looked this good doing it. The music is really good too, much better than the previous games, which already had pretty good soundtracks. But Persona 5 is good enough to listen to outside of the game and even listen to it around normies and stuff, which very few games can manage. The environments look great too. The game now has properly designed dungeons for the main story, which look much nicer than the previous games. I guess it's easier to design things nicely when they're not just templates to slot together. The game feels much better with properly designed levels with a beginning, middle and end, instead of just floor after floor of random dungeon. They have much better atmosphere too. That said, there actually is a random dungeon for grinding in. It is just floor after floor like all the old games, but it's seemingly optional until the very end when you have to go down to the bottom, which must be a nightmare for people who ignored it and focused on story stuff instead of leveling, because they would have to go from the very top all the way to the very bottom in one fucking go. Nightmare. It wouldn't be that hard to do. There isn't that much grinding at all for a JRPG. I mean, you can grind, but there isn't that much point. Just one run through a story dungeon should be enough to level you for the boss. The only time I had to grind was for the final boss, who has a huge charge attack that one-shot my entire team. Even though we were at full health and defending, he can still one-shot everyone. But aside from that, I didn't need to grind once really, which is a nice change from other JRPGs I've played. The story is much darker and deals with much more realistic events than the previous games. For example, the first boss you face, spoilers, the first boss you face is fucking hell. The first boss you face is an abusive school teacher who like rapes a student, and then but instead of going to the police, she tries to kill herself. So it looks like he's going to get away with it. She tries to kill herself, I should say, not she kills herself. So it looks like he's going to get away with it, which is when like you and your little band of merry men step in and deal with him. The stories all deal with these kind of darker themes, like there's different kinds of exploitation of kids by adults, which is kind of interesting to see in a video game. You get stuff like that in movies and TV, but games kind of avoid it pretty much, so kind of interesting. The game is set in Tokyo this time and features many famous spots from the city. It's pretty cool to be able to explore Tokyo, but if I'm honest, I preferred Inaba. It felt much cozier, and from a pure gameplay point of view, it was a much smaller town. So when a new month comes around and the NPCs get new dialogue, it's much quicker to just like run around Inaba and see what's new instead of all of fucking Tokyo. I felt the characters weren't as interesting as the ones in Persona 4. They all seemed kind of bland, except for Futaba, who was just annoying and spoke in memes half the fucking time. The stupid Japanese mascot was a lot less annoying than the last stupid Japanese mascot, but at the end of the day, you don't need a cutesy talking animal at all, and less annoying than Teddy is hardly a fucking compliment. Herpes is less annoying than Teddy. I also felt like the social links weren't as good as in previous games. In 5, every social link gives you buffs and perks as you level them up, so if you're like me, you end up choosing which contact to hang out with based on what perk you're working towards, not what's happening in their story and how interested you are in it and all that stuff. It's kind of a shame. I really got into some of the stories in 3 and 4, whereas here I just kind of sat through them to get the perk. I didn't really care about what was going on, I just wanted the perk. I kind of feel like the social links should be the reward. You shouldn't get a reward for doing them. because otherwise it kind of like, the dialogue becomes devalued when all you want is like the combat buff. So I didn't really enjoy the story aspect as much as in previous games. It all felt way too straightforward. Like, I assumed there would be a secret bad guy, but who it was so obvious that I thought that person was put there as a red herring to distract me from the real secret bad guy. But then they were the secret bad guy, and I was like, oh, are you kidding me? So yeah, it was a bit obvious. Everything was a bit straightforward, a little bit less complex than the other games story-wise. So that was Persona 5. I think it'll be a while before I try another long-ass game like this one. 100+ hours is too much for me right now, I think. It might be okay for most people or some people, but for me, I need good combat and lots of it to keep me entertained for that long. And Persona games are 50% combat and 50% talking, and if we're honest, the combat is pretty shit. You just exploit the enemy's weakness, which you discover by trial and error, then do a joint attack. But the story and seeing the new character design, enemy designs, was enough to carry the game for me. I liked playing it, but it will be a while before I play another JRPG. Certainly before I play another Persona game, if ever. It really felt like a grueling slog for a while. I played the last 30 or 40 hours just wanting the game to end. I didn't want to quit, because then it would have been fucking burning in the back of my brain. I didn't beat the game, and I would have just picked it up in a year or two and had to play the first 60 hours again. I didn't want to play them again. I wanted the closure, but I'd had quite enough by hour 50 or 60. The rest was just me being stubborn rather than me enjoying the game. It's a really good game. It's just too long for me, and there's too much of it. I'm just not sure if it's the kind of game I need to be playing right now, because like my real life stuff is taking up a lot of my time. Like I'm sure you've noticed these videos are coming a lot slower than they used to. I'm working. I'm not just like, I haven't given up or got bored. I'm working. Like my new job is hard. Like I gotta work like weekends and evenings and shit like this. So I don't have time for these fucking Personas and JRPGs and all that. So yeah, it's good. Like if you've got the time, it's good. But if you don't, then damn, it's a long game. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. There's plenty more coming soon if you want to subscribe, and a bunch already on the channel if you want to check them out right now. See you next time. See ya. Because my outro, I always go see ya like that, but then I said see you next time, so now it then would be weird to say see ya after that, wouldn't it? Tell you what, I've killed the moment so I can say it again. See ya.